Welcome back to Brazil Crypto Report. For this episode, I'm joined by Taynaah Reis, who's a coder, entrepreneur, and crypto veteran. We discuss how Taynaah learned how to code when she was just 12 years old, how she started her first company when she was 16, and her current projects around microcredit, social inclusion, and the environment. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Brazil Crypto Report podcast, coming to you live from the Blockchain Rio Festival. We're on day 2 of the event here. It's really awesome. We're cruising along here with a few more episodes. Today we're joined by Taynaah Reis, who is, I've known Taynaah for probably like 5-6 years now. Been trying to get her on the podcast for a long time, but we finally made it happen here. So really great to have you on the show, Taynaah. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very happy now that we got to be together. It has been like a couple of years that we know each other, and finally we made it.
Yeah. Our paths have crossed a bunch of times here, but we're finally making a recording here and having official conversation. So,
awesome.
So maybe to get started, why don't you just give us a bit of background on yourself? You've been involved in like all sorts of kind of really interesting kind of social impact focused entrepreneurial initiatives, kind of at the intersection of fintech and blockchain and Brazil specifically. Over the years, but why don't you just kind of give what's sort of the Reader's Digest version of your story here?
Absolutely. I'm self-taught in many programming languages, so I code since I'm 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
I opened my first company when I was 16, and I got into blockchain 5 years ago. I created a cryptocurrency for microcredit and microfinance. I did an ICO, was one of the beginning of the ICOs and the first one in Brazil. And then I developed a fintech, and then I got into the financial industry and the fintech business. And today I'm like doing carbon credits and like the intersection between nature, technology, and finance.
Very cool. So it was a very abbreviated answer, but there's like a lot that was summarized
like
there.
A lot into my life.
So maybe we can kind of start with what you're doing right now, and then because you have this Inkluziva company, or I'm not sure if it's a company or like a nonprofit or what exactly it is, but maybe talk a bit about what you're doing with this Inkluziva initiative, and then we can kind of like work backwards a little bit to some of what you learned in like the 2017 years doing your. I think that was when we first met. You were doing that the Moeda Seeds project. But maybe talk a bit about what you're doing, what you're working on right now. I've seen you around at a lot of events here in Brazil, and kind of involved in a lot of the, really kind of on the social impact front with a lot of these different, some of the entrepreneurs and things. So we'd love to just hear about what you're working on right now.
Absolutely. In Inkluziva, we do blockchain for education. So we have developed a couple of initiatives and e-learning software, and then we have NFT certificates that we give up to the students, both in the public school and private school. And we have developed AI for the mental health care. So our algorithm can recognize if the person has like depression or suicidal ideas, and like scrapping the social media. And this for me was like the beginning of like working with AI for good. So we developed that. And I'm an ambassador for the Inkluziva project. We have a token for education too that incentivizes students to learn and educate them. And I have another initiative that is a carbon credit exchange. It's called Oxygen. So I'm like doing like a couple of things at the same time, but all correlated with technology. So we use the carbon credit exchange, blockchain, and AI to track the projects that we issue. And we still do microfinancing for farmers in the other initiative that I have for Moeda.
Oh, very cool. So you've got kind of 3 things that you're working on essentially simultaneously, like all in concert. So maybe let's dive into the carbon credit angle, or because this is an area that I find pretty interesting. It seems like there's a pretty big addressable market for this stuff. There's definitely like a demand for these types of things, but it seems like I feel like whenever I talk to people about this, I'm always a little confused about how it like actually works, or how it would actually, like, I understand like maybe how this little system that they've built might work, but like how does this work to get people to actually use it and get these credits to be sort of standardized to some extent so that you get, a larger mass of people or of companies that are using these things. But would love to just kind of dive into specifically what you're building here and like who's using it, like how does it work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very fragmented market and it's very complex. And that's why we are taking technology to simplify it, because like every time that that happened at the WEF, when I went there was like the formulary to subscribe to the WEF was like, oh, you should offset your carbon credit. But people sign up to it, but no one actually does it. And most of the people, when I ask the audience, like, have you ever offset your carbon credits? And people say no. And most of the people, I don't know how to do it. And that can get into a situation that I told myself, like, I want to simplify that process. Both like getting projects that we can rely on and we can trust. So I have partners that have done projects offline in Brazil in the traditional methods and getting verified and certified by international with like credibility into the market. So I took those projects and I tokenized them, and I made a simple way for people to just go buy and offset the carbon credits, both with carbon credits and with methane credits, because most of the people talk about carbon, but they forget about the methane as well. And the methane is a greenhouse gas that is like 20 times more dangerous than the carbon. So I've tokenized both the carbon and the methane credits, and I made it like a simple way for people to see the project and track the project, see along the way, and have the accountability for the project, and then purchase and offset and retire the carbon credits as well.
Interesting. So the intended users for this are more, it's less like maybe enterprises, and it's more kind of everyday people that want to, So when you go to these if you go to a conference and you're like, who's actually offset their carbon credits, their personal, their cost of carbon of actually traveling to the event, for example.
Yes.
And you kind of eliminate that problem of people that they want to do it, but they just don't know how. Like there's an easy solution for them to actually do it. So it's really aimed at more of kind of your environmentally conscious consumer, essentially. Absolutely. Providing an easy solution there. And I mean, and I know I'm not super familiar with the world of carbon credits, but I know that there's a lot of people trying to do these things using tokenization and blockchain, and there's a lot of other kind of fragments where people are issuing these things without blockchain, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I guess, can you kind of maybe just describe like how does like the fragmentation, what's like the landscape of fragmentation here? Like how many different types of carbon credits are like people issue? Because from my understanding, like a lot of these things are being issued and like there's not like a one-to-one sort of parity of these. Like there's certain carbon credits that are maybe like actually worth more than others, or they're representing certain different level of carbon that others might be, and they're running on different systems, so they're not really interoperable. But maybe kind of just describe like what is like the landscape of like fragmentation right now?
It can be a variety of projects, from like renewable energy to forests. So we focus on forests, but with additionality. So we take in consideration biodiversity and the social impact that the project causes too. So sometimes you are buying the carbon credit, but you don't know where it comes from, and the additionality, like if that is really helpful for a community or not. So quilombolas, indigenous communities. So we take projects that are really like making an impact on the field, and the blockchain helps to give transparency to that project, for people to understand what actually they are really buying. So that's what we do today, and that's where technology helps the most, because there is a lot of greenwashing, there is a lot of people like just marketing some projects, but when you go to see like, oh, it's really helping the environment and the community around it, and then you see, 90% of the credits are not
like made up.
Made up, yes.
Yeah, that seems like it would be very difficult to verify, like actually verifying these things. This seems like it does seem like, not to be like overly critical of it, but just does seem like a system that's very easy to game. Yeah. And because there's such a demand to like buy these things, I think, at least among certain segments of the population or enterprises, that they just kind of want these things to like a company, a publicly traded company that, like for instance, in the SEC, next year the SEC in the U.S. is requiring companies to put kind of their carbon footprint or their carbon offsets like on their they have to report this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like they're going to be fined if they don't report, like if they don't offset X amount of carbon, but they at least have to. It opens them up to more scrutiny, right? Yes. So they're in the interest of just showing like, hey, we bought we offset 1 million tons of carbon this year through carbon credits. Like they're, I guess. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I'd probably be less interested in like the veracity of those carbon credits and just more interested in just showing people like, hey, I did this. Yeah. And if all these carbon credits were actually fake, it's like, well, how was I supposed to know? Because I'm that's not my day job, is like tracking these things and verifying these things. Like I just went with what the industry standard was and what. So it seems like there's a lot of incentives to kind of game this system, I guess, and there's a need for like a trusted layer that a blockchain tokenized solution can provide here to verify that there's parity between these. Like one carbon credit issued from player or from X NGO is equivalent to one carbon credit issued from like the other NGO, for example. But anyway, it's my rant about carbon credits, I guess.
Absolutely, and more like layers of information that we can give to the public, the better for the trust. Yeah,
absolutely. It just feels like a very sort of it's like overly washed with marketing at this point, and maybe not enough actual substance. So let's talk a bit about the microcredit platform that you had set up as well. I think this is when we first spoke a few years ago, but you were just starting out.
Yes.
And it was really interesting. From what I remember, it was a very interesting kind of microcredit platform, really trying to basically give credit to smaller farmers in Brazil, particularly just because there's a lot of access to credit issues. Maybe just talk a bit about that, like how that's evolved, and maybe what have been the biggest learnings so far from that project.
Absolutely. That's what I first started. My father helped to build one of the largest microcredit programs within Brazil, called Pronaf. So I took the learnings of my father and put technology into that and developed the cryptocurrency to make that happen in a faster way, more affordable way. And I do see that the same challenges that we had 10 years ago, especially women in the rural areas. It's hard for them to access credit. And what I did was putting the traditional ways of financing and doing the microcredit with the new economy, how can Web3 intersect that and give transparency to the credit that we are giving, plus knowing how many jobs that were made and how was the environment impacted too. So with the blockchain, we can know exactly for each dollar landed how much we have as an impact of that.
Very cool. And then, so is this still in operation? Or you're still, this is amongst many projects you're working on right now. But
yes.
What are some maybe just some success stories from the program? Is there any that stand out of people that have maybe been able to access credit in some way that maybe they couldn't before just by this program?
Absolutely. We have a couple of indigenous communities where we got there. We first installed the internet, and because we saw there was no infrastructure, it was many cases in Brazil, and that was very, very successful for us. And opening up for them their first digital wallet was very, at the beginning, challenging because they didn't know about crypto or blockchain. So it was experience of education into financial inclusion as well. And still today we support the indigenous community, both with the internet, with the infrastructure, and with funds for their handcraft made products too. So it's
okay.
So for us, for me, it's for my heart. I love going into the indigenous communities, and I love see how that technology that we make it here can impact their lives.
Okay, super interesting. And then maybe to kind of wrap up here, I would love to just talk a bit about you've got this kind of unique like entrepreneurial sort of like, I mean, we kind of talked about at the beginning. You learn how to code at 12. You open your first company at 16. You've got kind of this very like unique kind of skill set, I guess, and drive, and you've been operating in this it's kind of the bleeding edge of like technology and social impact for some time. But like, what is it that like really motivates you? Like, you seem the type of person who could be successful doing like a normal job, if you wanted to. But what is it that like really motivates you to keep kind of like keep plodding along and keep building new things?
I think it's the purpose of like doing something impactful with the technology that I make. So every time that I code or I do something, is like gotta be with a purpose, gotta be about education, mental health, environment, gotta be something that leaves a legacy or something good for the world. That's what motivates me, and like wake up every day. And my dad has been a big inspiration as well for me. So he took me to the indigenous communities, the quilombolas.
Oh, interesting.
So I grew up as a child surrounded by products from the farmers. So I saw the challenges and the pain points from early on. And I was like, oh, if I grow up, I want to do this bank thing that will support women and firsthand, like will give credit to the women. Oh, I want to build this bank for the new economy. Oh, I want to build this like carbon credit that will facilitate people to offset their carbon credits. So I always see like, oh, there's a challenge. Like I can solve this with technology. Or let's make it together. And I found like the right partners and right mentors, and that is a blessing.
Oh, that's super cool. That's super cool. Very, very inspiring. And maybe just to kind of to round up here to close off. So you were recently selected among the World Economic Forum Tech Pioneers.
Yes.
And maybe just talk a bit about what that is, and what is that? Now that you're part of the club, I guess. Like, what does that mean?
Yes, no, that was amazing. Like I didn't expect that. Was a recognition, is an award from the World Economic Forum, especially about the work with the microfinance and the environment. Now with the carbon credit exchange and methane exchange, for me that is a big platform that I can like showcase to world leaders, and like just being part of the club, as you mentioned, is amazing. I've been going to the World Economic Forum in an unofficial way, just like to hang out with the amazing people there. Is always there, and now I get to be like officially part of the WEF. And this for me is a blessing in my life. Like I do see many opportunities, and I can grow a lot from that.
Very cool, very cool. Well, congratulations on that. That's a pretty prestigious honor. And then maybe just final question that I've been posing to everybody lately is, we're in the blockchain world. We're kind of in a bear market right now. It's not the greatest of times. Yeah. But what are you most excited about right now when you look around the market? What are you most excited about over for the next 6-12 months, or is there any particular themes that you kind of see optimism where other people might be seeing pessimism?
I'm very excited about artificial intelligence and how that can play into the technologies that I work. The development on the finance side, like algorithms that I can make it easy for people to analyze a credit and give credit, to bring more transparency to carbon credit projects, and to really analyze the projects and score the projects in a most like automated way. So artificial intelligence has like many implications that I do see that like purchasing carbon credits should be like an everyday task, and AI can like help to facilitate that very easily, to include in people's lives. Like you shouldn't think about doing something for the environment or doing like a social work. That should be part of your everyday tasks. AI should advise you to invest in sustainable projects, and that can be done like in an analytical way, in a like most like intelligent and smart way. That's how we can achieve a sustainable economy, will be through like a good and smart technology that can help support us into our everyday tasks, to be more sustainable.
Amazing. Well, Taynaah, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been it's really great to finally get you back on, and really inspiring work that you're doing. So keep it up. Congratulations on all your success and continued success. And thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to the Blockchain Rio Festival for hosting us. And we'll be back with another great episode pretty soon.
Thank you so much.